testified. That's what Ossoff was asking about. It was congressional testimony under oath. So it's either he was lying then, or they didn't know what they were talking about.
And why did you start a war of choice? If it was really that neglected and we had all of these missing stockpiles, maybe you should have asked for the money first.
Once troops are committed, once the American military is in theater, hang them out to dry, as some Democrats are proposing,
none of us are actually proposing that.
Would be
also, we should be realistic.
Let me get to this question.
A choice.
How, under any circumstances, any rational American could look at this and say this is not a failure by the Trump administration, a complete abject failure of foreign policy.
This administration is asking for more money to support, again, a war that looks like there's no end in sight, and yet wanting Congress to just open its purse and say, have as much as you want and as much as you need.
Our munitions are depleted, and we are in a position now where we either need to put up or shut up with respect to keeping our military strong and ready to go to deter other threats.
Hundreds of U.S. troops have been injured in just the past 2 weeks. Not only that, gas prices are $4 a gallon. The Strait of Hormuz is still controlled by Iran.
Guys, last night on Abby Phillip's show, MAGA pundits were completely dismantled when they tried to defend Pete Hegseth's demand for $87 billion to support the ongoing war against Iran. The progressive journalists fact-checked these MAGA creeps so hard, they were cornered into complete silence. Now I'm going to play some clips from the show, and I'll share my opinion as we go.
Tonight, $37.5 billion. That's how much Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth says the American taxpayers have already spent on the war in Iran. But according to experts, that bill is actually much likely higher. But it's not enough, according to Hegseth. He was over on Capitol Hill today asking for more, $87 billion to be specific, from lawmakers. $67 billion of that was to cover the cost of the ongoing conflict in Iran.
Without these funds, we face critical shortfalls that threaten our ability to also simply pay our service members, rapidly replenish equipment and munitions, and sustain vital operations without disruption.
Even before the hearing today, some Republicans were already skeptical of this request. Several of them told CNN that the Pentagon hasn't given them enough information about what the needs actually are. Even the Republicans who want to approve the funding request, they fear that it could be a political gamble that could impact the midterm elections. Congressman Brian Fitzpatrick says that that's a lot of money to blow through in a very short period of time, adding, quote, "They shouldn't just expect us to go along with whatever they say. They've got to make their case." But Hegseth faced an uphill battle with Congress, and Democrats didn't hold back today.
Shame on you and others who call this a quagmire and a failure, and then you want to turn around and say you support the warfighter. Either you do or you don't.
Because I use the word failure to their leaders. You, sir, are the failure, not the men and women who are on that front line.
Mr. Secretary, you stated we had, quote, achieved every single objective. Was that an accurate statement 4 months ago?
The main objective of this was to ensure that Iran never gets a nuclear weapon. Their main sites were obliterated.
So just to review, you will not answer whether your statement made on the 14th day of the war that Iran's military had been, quote, destroyed and made combat ineffective was a truthful statement to the American people as you sit here and ask for tens of billions more for the conflict.
Senator's time has
Had a historic and effective military campaign against the largest state sponsor of terrorism.
Won't answer the question.
Joining us in our fifth seat is former JAG officer Margaret Donovan. Margaret, it seems to me that last exchange with Senator Ossoff is at the heart of the problem, that the Trump administration sold a story that this war was over within just a few days, that Iran had been defeated, and now they're asking for essentially an open-ended commitment, and a financial commitment at that. How do you think Congress really should respond to a request like this?
So Congress is in a really tricky situation right now because the administration started this without the proper legal authority for the war. Under the Constitution, war powers are shared between Article 2, which is the executive branch, and Article 1, which is the legislative branch. If you are starting a war, if you are declaring war, if you are authorizing a war, that should be starting from Congress. That is the genesis of that legal authorization. Instead, the Trump administration basically came up with this post hoc rationalization after they started the war on February 28th, saying we were all in imminent danger, we needed to go now. Fine, all well and good, but you still have to go back to Congress and ask for authorization after 60 days under the War Powers Resolution. And so what's happening now is basically the opposite of what the framers of the Constitution wanted. We are involved in a war overseas. There are troops committed. We are racking up costs both in money and in American lives, and Congress is being asked to fund it. And they are in a very difficult position now where the executive branch has basically put the United States military in harm's way and is asking Congress to bail them out. That is precisely why, when you begin a conflict, if it is not a case of imminent self-defense, that needs to start from Congress. They need to be briefed on the plan. They need to understand the funding that goes into it. And we have seen none of that here.
Yeah, it's kind of a backwards way of doing a war, Scott. And then on top of that, I think, let's say Congress does decide to do this. It sounds like, at the very least, they are in a position to ask for the administration to give them assurances of what comes next. And when you listen to Pete Hegseth, he can't back up his own past statements, and he also can't assure these lawmakers that there's actually a plan for what comes next.
Well, a couple things. One, look, I do think it's unequivocally true that we have dramatically degraded Iran's military and ability to do things, not completely dismantle them. Obviously, they have the ability to shoot some missiles and attack drones and make some trouble. But, you know, we have destroyed thousands of military targets, and that's not in dispute. Number two, I think it'll be a long time from today before they could possibly build a nuclear weapon. Not that that has stopped their ambitions, and not that we don't have some targets, which I know is in the reporting that CNN has tonight about possibly hitting Pickaxe Mountain. But I will say this, Congress has every right to ask for every bit of information they can get. Congress has every right and duty to get as much transparency out of the Pentagon as they can get. They need to know what are the objectives here, what are the end games, what are the projections that the military planners have. If I were a member of Congress, I'd be asking those same questions.
Wouldn't you be skeptical if Pete Hegseth had come to you 3 months ago and said, we've met all of our objectives, their military is decimated, and then now he's saying, actually, never mind?
Well, I mean, we're saying that there's still more work to do, I think, is what the administration is arguing.
But that's not what they, he testified. That's what Ossoff was asking about. It was congressional testimony under oath. So it's either he was lying then, or they didn't know what they were talking about then, which raises other serious questions about what they know now.
Look, guys, it is shocking to see that Donald Trump is pouring tens of billions of taxpayer dollars into this war against Iran. As of now, $37 billion have been spent on the conflict, and many analysts believe the real cost is much higher. Not only that, Iran has destroyed American bases in Gulf countries, causing more than $100 billion in damage. And you know what the most surprising part is? Neither Trump nor his brainless cronies have any idea when this fighting will end. Since the start of the war in February this year, Trump has been bragging that we destroyed Iran's navy, obliterated its capacity to fight back, and destroyed its missile launchers. But in the end, despite losing over $100 billion in this self-created war, we are nowhere close to winning it. I honestly think that instead of destroying Iran, our egotistical president ended up making them stronger than ever. Iran now controls the Strait of Hormuz, the passage that carries nearly 20% of the global oil supply. And this brainless Trump doesn't have any clue how to end this war and save face in front of all his followers.
Look, I think they were pretty clear that they had met a serious amount of military objectives, and they've been very clear that they want to stop Iran from getting a nuclear weapon. They think the best way to continue to do that is to continue the war at this point. But again, if I were in the shoes of a senator or a congressman, I would be asking some of these same questions, because I would want to know, what is your time horizon here? And also I'd want to know, is there any diplomatic going on in the back channel that might alter your request?
Let me play what he said about Russia and China and their role in all of this.
Are Russia and China helping Iran? And if so, how?
Well, Senator, as the chairman alluded to, there's definitely adversary alignment, attempts to do so, and there are many ways that we deter that, some of which are, and the depth and extent of it ought to remain classified, and it should, but there are ways in which both of those countries are limiting at different levels, enabling some of the things Iran is doing, yes.
That's quite the admission. I mean, they thought that this would be a one and done, in and out kind of thing, and now they're acknowledging Russia and China are involved. We're not holding them accountable in any way.
It's the hubris that the administration started the year with after the campaign in Venezuela. They took out Maduro. They were planning to take out Iran and then Cuba next. It was all part of the domino strategy they had. Now, the U.S. military said today, we've had 11 consecutive nights of airstrikes against Iran and this so-called ceasefire we have going on. 11 consecutive nights of airstrikes. And Iran is still attacking us. They just killed at least three, maybe four American soldiers over the weekend. Hundreds of U.S. troops have been injured in just the past 2 weeks. Not only that, gas prices are $4 a gallon. The Strait of Hormuz is still controlled by Iran. There's no unconditional surrender. And the quote-unquote ceasefire deal was proposing to give $300 billion to Iran for reparations. I don't see how, under any circumstances, any rational American could look at this and say this is not a failure by the Trump administration, a complete abject failure of foreign policy.
Jesse?
Well, I mean, the answer to your question, right? How do we counter China if they're playing a role in this? The answer is to refill those depleted munitions, right? Advanced munitions and Patriot missiles. You don't have to be a proponent of this war, I think, to be a supporter of increasing the defense budget at this point in time. This is about getting the American warfighter paid on a regular basis, and this is about ensuring that we have a military that's prepared to not only fight the next war, God forbid, but deter the next war as well. And every day we go forward where, again, whether or not you agree with us getting involved in this conflict to begin with, our munitions are depleted, and we are in a position now where we either need to put up or shut up with respect to keeping our military strong and ready to go to deter other threats.
But that was one of the main points that the secretary made. He basically said he inherited this neglected and unmaintenanced military. So when I watched that, I just thought, then why did you start a war of choice? If it was really that neglected and we had all of these missing stockpiles, maybe you should have asked for the money first.
It's a legitimate question for the it's a legitimate question for the commander-in-chief, but right now the defense secretary or the war secretary was there making the case for the funding he needs to continue running his department efficiently and evade any threats from hostile actors abroad.
Well, you know, it's not just our stockpiles that are being depleted. It's the Gulf states as well. The Patriot interceptors, there's something like 2,200 down.
And as Scott mentioned, it's the Iranian military that's been heavily degraded as well. A lot of things have happened since the outset of this conflict.
It just seems like a very high price to pay for an unclear
It certainly
threat.
is. Every war is. We've got American men who are coming home in boxes from this conflict. So, yeah, war is a game where it costs a lot.
Guys, because of this war, Americans are facing the consequences. During his election campaign, Trump promised to deal with rising inflation, higher grocery prices, expensive healthcare, and unaffordable housing. Instead of bringing those prices down, he's caused gas prices to skyrocket because of this unnecessary war. And now, Defense Secretary Hegseth has demanded $87 billion more, of which $67 billion will be used for the war. I mean, what the F? American households are struggling to meet their daily needs. Many families are finding it almost impossible to manage their expenses because of the rising cost of living. And these idiots in power are wasting tens of billions of dollars of taxpayer money in a war that was not even necessary to start with. It's quite surprising that these brainless people in power have effed up so much that some Republicans are beginning to question the war. But still, these MAGA goons keep supporting every dumb move of Trump and his cronies in the entire administration. I mean, don't you guys have any integrity?
It's a game where it costs a lot, but the reality is I just remember over and over one of Trump's key campaign talking points was that we were going to stop these endless wars and not be in these forever wars. And what we have seen even in this hearing today is that there is no answer from this administration on exactly how they plan to get us out of this war. And to the point that you made, I'm glad you brought this up as well as you, Keith, we are losing lives. American citizens are losing their lives fighting a war that we don't see an end to, that isn't a promise that this administration ran on. And so it's really frustrating to hear that this administration is asking for more money to support, again, a war that looks like there's no end in sight, and yet wanting Congress to just open its purse and say, have as much as you want and as much as you need.
Well, it's not just to support the war, it's to support the men and women who are deployed, regardless of whether you agree with the policy decision. I take it you don't agree with it, and that's a legitimate position. Once troops are committed, once the American military is in theater, to hang them out to dry, as some Democrats are proposing,
none of us are actually proposing that.
Also, we should be realistic.
Let me get to this question because this is a question from our viewer to this conversation. Can Congress designate what the funds can be used for and not give them a blank check?
Yeah, absolutely. They can specifically designate it. And that's what you heard a lot of the discussion today was, look, we already gave you this amount of money for this particular mission set. So why are you coming back and asking us for more? So they can absolutely appropriate it for a specific purpose, a time, and an amount. And any violation of those three factors could be basically a serious offense by the Secretary of Defense if he doesn't spend the money properly.
Also, Scott, I mean, I just wonder, wouldn't the administration have gamed this out in advance? What would be the impact on our stockpiles? What would be the impact on our funding, our ability to pay the troops? I mean, shouldn't they have gone through that planning before they decide to engage in a war with Iran?
Well, I'm sure they did, but you can't predict every minute of every day of the future. And I'm sure some things have happened in this conflict that they thought would happen, and I'm sure some things have happened that they thought might not happen. And the purpose of going to Congress now is to say, we're in theater, we have an objective, stop the Iranians from ever having the possibility of getting a nuclear weapon, and this is what it costs to do that. We've argued a little bit over the last few weeks and months about whether this was an imminent threat or not. The commander-in-chief made a decision that, in fact, it was an imminent threat. And you can agree or disagree with that, but once the decision is made, you have to finish the job on it.
I mean, you say you can agree or disagree. The central question is whether or not the administration is making the right decisions. Because if they're telling you they need more money for some end that they may or may not be able to achieve, Congress ought to be able to say, we don't think you can achieve.
Well, that's it for today, guys. What do you all think? Let me know in the comments. I'll see you in the next video.